We're live.
Hi.
Woohoo!
See how we did that? We're just like, we're live. We're live. Tip 2. I'm doing this because that's a bright window that's happening right there. And it's more distracting to me than probably anyone else.
So, hello everybody. I'm
Welcome,
Bethany.
everybody. I'm
Cara.
Cara Wright. Welcome to my page and welcome to X Tips for X-Men. And this is tip number 2.
Tip 2.
Tip 2. That's kind of fun to say.
It was.
Try it at home by yourself when no one's watching because it's weird to say it, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So the end of the live yesterday, somebody had asked about space because I had mentioned.
You kept us hanging.
Yeah, I did. I had
did.
mentioned in the live that basically we are space. Hi, Megan. And I then kept everyone hanging about that. And somebody had asked, like, what exactly do you mean about we're mostly space? And the one thing that I will say is that, especially for X-Men, what is more our reality as an X-Men is space, where there isn't a lot of conclusion or judgment or decisions in our world naturally. That's not something that we tend to come in with the desire to do. However, this reality really likes to have the opposite of what space is. Space is, like I said, not a lot of conclusion, not a lot of judgment, and not a lot of like, how often as a kid did somebody want you to describe something specifically or define something or tell them what you were going to do? And how often did you have a really hard time with that? And how often did you really make yourself wrong? Did anyone ever do the whole, like, well, what would you like to do today? And you never really knew how to answer that? Or, like, where people wanted you to decide a future event. I'm still this way. This is one of the things that I think it drives my husband fairly crazy, because I don't ever really have a point of view about what we're doing. Like, right. Do you want to go do this? Or what do you want to have for dinner? Or going to the store with me sometimes can be one of the most frustrating things for him, because I can stand in an aisle and look at a million different things and not know what to choose.
Well, I think even if you're like, hey, what would you like to have for dinner? Like, for me, when you ask that question, it's like the possibilities are there's like pop, 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 like there's so many possibilities, and I'm like, yay.
Exactly. Like, that is exactly, thank you for saying that, because one of the things that X-Men are really, really, really good at is being aware of massive possibilities. And we're not that great at, like, coming to a conclusion about one or two of them. And so we tend to kind of get a little like, what do I choose, or how? Because this reality doesn't actually teach you how to choose.
Well, it doesn't teach you how to choose. And like, you've actually really helped me with this. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but it's even like that, like living in 10-second increments. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, you got 10 seconds, now what? And I'm like,
like, so much information.
Over. Now what? And I'm like, yes. Because it's like I just perceived everything.
Exactly. And so what can happen is, like, being space and having that ability to be aware of all these different possibilities, it's not a wrongness. And yet, because we're not really taught how to create with that, we're not really taught, like, that's not how you go to school and learn how to be successful. It is the antithesis of how you're taught in school, how to be successful, how to get good grades, how to, like, I am not a dumb person. And I was always in the, like, I would always be going down a grade when I was like, for the math or for the reading, because I functioned very differently from more of a spacious place, not linear at all. And
Mhm.
if you look at school, the the idea of going not linear is like, are you crazy? Like, no, we have to do things A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, that's how we do things. And so what happens over time, like X-Men are born with this ability to like completely perceive all the possibilities. We actually are the question. Gary Douglas is one of my favorite things he ever said is autism is the question that other people are not willing to be. Which it took me like
I have to write that one
a
down. Autism.
while to even hear what he said. Autism is the question that most people are not willing to be.
Wow.
Meaning, like, because one of the things that is true for autistic people is they have a spherical awareness. So they don't really have they don't have a past, present, or future. And they don't have a left brain, right brain activity. They have a whole brain activity. So there is like for somebody who is naturally autistic, like linearity is completely, it's not a lot of ease, and it has to be taught, and it has to be retaught and retaught. And
Yeah.
most of the time, most of us are really not great at it. And what we've created is an ability to cope, like a coping mechanism, so that we can seem to be linear and seem to be doing
Yeah.
things the way everyone is doing them,
Like
but
I created like
we're really
systems
not.
for
Yeah.
me. I had to create like some systems to be able
Yep.
to function, like remember things or institute things that like are required to be instituted. And
Yep.
so my phone reminds me, pings, I write things down. But how does an X-Men choose though? Like what, like, so,
So
if you're going to eat and like your husband's like, can you just pick a place? Like, so
yeah,
what's the tip that you've used? Because we are here in this reality, and how
yep,
do we choose?
exactly. And we're also incredibly, because we are so much space. The other thing I'll say about space, because X-Men are so much space, there is a subtlety to the energy that we be naturally and who we are. And so when you're inundated with other people's solidity of their decisions and their conclusions and their judgments, oftentimes we will just pick those up. Like, I'm not really sure what to choose, so I'll choose that because that seems to work for that person. Which is one of the things that I think a
We
lot
like
of us get
mimic.
really good at. We get really good at it. Does it actually create the future that we'd like to create? Not necessarily. So one of the things that I already talked about, one question.
Okay.
There's 4 elements of creation that we talk about in Access. And for X-Men, living in these 4 elements as much as possible is going to actually start to allow you to create the future that you know is possible. And whether that future is 5 hours from now, because you don't know what to have for dinner, or you're looking at creating a business, or you're looking at creating something bigger into the future. And so the 4 elements are question, choice, possibility, and contribution. So you can actually start to be aware of, okay, what would I like to choose? What will this choice create? And you're aware of the possibilities of all the possibilities of what you could choose come forward. And
Right.
then you can look at like, would that be a contribution to me? Would that be a contribution to the world? Would that be a contribution to, if you're going to dinner, to my partner? So it allows you to start to be aware of what you would like to choose from the space that you actually are, not from, as an X-Men, not from the solidity, the decisions, the judgments, the conclusions that you've been taught to create your life from.
That was brilliant. Like that, I just actually heard for the first time contribution.
Well, it's,
Like I know that was in
yeah,
there, but like
yeah.
this is really the first time I actually heard it.
I get it when you get it.
You get it when you get it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're looking at being a contribution, like what's a steward of, you know, the planet, or living from like the kingdom of we, and, you know, you hear these concepts, and I get that it's something that that I'd like to choose, but I'm always like, what? And I just, you know, I got that that's like included in.
Well, in contribution too, when you look at it, because another thing that X-Men aren't necessarily that great at is actually including themselves in the choice, possibility, like including themselves in what they're creating. Oftentimes it becomes this: I'm creating this out here and I'm over here. And so that is an actual way that you can start to include yourself in what you're asking to create or where you're going in your own life, which I know sounds really funny, but there's a lot of you out there going, holy shit, I've been doing that since I went to school, and probably before.
And well, I love what you brought up too with the space thing, is because I have actually learned to like mimic.
Yep.
Like I would or duplicate something that somebody was doing. Like there's times where I have to write reports and I have to do other things that absolutely make no sense to me. They use a language in this, you know, corporation that I work in sometimes, and I'm always like, it makes no sense to me. Like there's no, like, it just makes no sense. So, and I've tried to figure it out, but there's no figuring it out. So I would mimic and duplicate, and then I would be able to still just create. And I get, you know, that is like the first example that comes out for me, but I get where I've done that my whole life, even like in school, like you have no clue, but I'd like look over and be like, oh,
I'll do that.
And that's what they're doing.
I don't have a sense of myself, because you as an X-Men are so much space. You know, nobody tells you when you come into the, you know, when you're born here, like, hey, you might feel a little different to yourself than other people. And you don't have that information. So you're like, well, so a lot of us have done that whole coping mechanism of like, I don't perceive myself the same way I perceive other people. Other people are more solid. They're more real. You know, we've made that the valuable thing, the relevant thing. And we've made what we are, space, more not valuable and not as relevant.
Relevant, for sure.
The tip I'm going to give you one more tip around the space topic, and it's like one of my favorite all-time X-Men tools, and it's going to make no sense to you, and I just invite you to try it.
Okay.
So if you find yourself,
we should have a drum roll.
Yes, it's literally my favorite tool. So good.
Go.
So it can be used in all different ways, but like if you're feeling like you have no sense of yourself at all, like you're just like, I have no idea. Or if you're feeling like super contracted because you're really aware of your environment.
Well, how do you know
a bazillion other?
Geez, like I guess that's a whole nother topic, but
like if you are just completely like don't have like you're in a room of people and you're more aware of all the people in the room than you are yourself.
Got ya. Okay.
Or you have no idea, like everybody else's decisions, conclusions, projections, expectations, and judgments are so loud. You have no clue what you would like to choose.
Got you.
That place. This is a tool you want to use. You want to say to yourself, everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be. And you keep saying that over and over and over again. Everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be. And what will happen is it basically unlocks where you're making the most loud things in the space more relevant than you, and you start to actually become more aware of yourself. So it also is really helpful if you go to bed at night and you have a hard time falling asleep, like your mind is too busy. And it can just be really helpful. Anytime you're kind of stuck in a contracted state, you can use it and just see what shows up. It's an amazing tool. I have used it like so much in my life. So that's the so question, choice, possibility, contribution, and what we call the crazy phrase. And those are the 2 tips for today.
That's a big one. This is a lot.
Yeah.
I think you've given them too much.
Maybe. Maybe. But you could tune in tomorrow just to see where we go.
Maybe.
And let me know if there's anything that comes up for you, and if there's like something now that you're aware of that you would like a tip for. We're still looking for tips for day 3, 4, and 5. So
Love that. Thank you so much for this.
Yes, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.